All right, sorry about that. We had a quick technical difficulty. So we're going to go back to Congressman Doyle telling us what the federal response has been to the coronavirus thus far.
Yeah, so three packages we're dealing with. Two have been passed already. One is the one we're negotiating right now. Let me say first of all that this is first and foremost a health crisis. There is nothing more important than us getting resources out to our first responders and out to our frontline healthcare workers. These are the real heroes in this battle. And to make sure that they have the equipment and the protection they need is going to be extremely important. So the first package appropriated $8.3 billion. This was a supplemental appropriation bill, and $3 billion of that went for research and developments for vaccines and therapeutics and diagnostic. So that money went to the National Institutes of Health and the CDC. The rest of the money, some $5 billion, was supposed to be, to help get for prevention and preparedness and response, support to states and local health agencies, low interest loans to small businesses, money to ensure that we can develop vaccines. That was the real thrust behind the first package. The second one, which was a much smaller package, was for things like free testing, so that people wouldn't have to pay to get a coronavirus test. Strengthening food assistance for people that we're going to be needing because maybe their businesses have been shut down or they've been laid off, to strengthen the food assistance network. Safeguarding our Medicaid benefits and enhancing unemployment aid. These were some of the things that were done in the second package, establishing paid leave. But like I said, that bill was a much smaller bill than the initial $8.5 billion. Now, the bill we're talking about now, this is the big one. We're talking about $2 trillion. And there's a lot in that package that we should be discussing, because I think the American people need to understand why Senate Democrats initially opposed the bill. The Republicans are trying to make it look like we don't want to pass an aid package to help Americans. But what we were trying to do, and what Senator Schumer was trying to do, was to make sure that there was some accountability to this $500 billion slush fund that Secretary Mnuchin was going to be able to use to dole out money to corporations. That was one of the big hangups. And then secondly, to make sure that we enhance payments to workers, and not just people that had covered by unemployment insurance, but self-employed individuals and independent contractors who aren't eligible for those benefits.
So that bill, now, as of yesterday, the third bill did not do well. It crashed in the Senate, and then Nancy Pelosi dropped her own and 1,400 pages. And I got about halfway through it last night till I went to sleep. But it is comprehensive. She is not messing around. She clearly was prepared. That was not a bluff. She was prepared and ready to go. Now the Senate's back on track today. So we're happy that the House was able to get them going. Senator Casey saying they're close. Everybody's saying they're close. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the President Mitch McConnell should understand by now that Nancy Pelosi doesn't bluff. One thing they should learn, and apparently they have a hard time learning that. But, I would say when you look at the bill that House Democrats put up under Speaker Pelosi, ours was a bottom-up approach. The Senate Republican bill was a top-down approach. And that's really the main differences between the two bills. But some of the good news, and this was because of what Speaker Pelosi did, she was serious when she made it clear to Mitch McConnell and to the White House that if the Senate Republicans continued to insist on their provisions and not incorporate some of the things that they had agreed to with the Senate Democrats, that we would do our own bill. And Senate Democrats, to their credit, held together. Every single one of them voted against cloture. and Mitch McConnell can stand up there and scream and shout all he wants. But the fact of the matter was $500 billion slush fund that would be doled out by Secretary Mnuchin with no guardrails on it and no oversight. There would never be a time in our history when any party, Democratic or Republican, could propose a $500 billion appropriation that would be handled by the administration with no oversight from Congress. That just could never be done. And that's one of the things that they were trying to get done. Secondly, we wanted to beef up the assistance directly going to families, unemployment insurance, and to make sure that we didn't let people fall through the cracks. Think about like your local hairdresser or barber, the person that cuts your grass, the guy that has a repair shop down the road. These are all self-employed individuals. They don't work for a company, they work for themselves. They're independent contractors, and they may work at a company, but they're not employees of that company. They're not eligible for unemployment insurance. These people were going to be left in the cracks. That bill got strengthened now that there's a 4-month provision for independent contractors and self-employed individuals that they'll be able to collect unemployment compensation. Part of it will be paid as a state benefit, and then the feds are kicking in money to the states that allow them to pump that benefit up an additional $600 a week. We want to make it possible for people to be able to participate in the economy. And they can't do that if they don't have any money. So if we're telling someone you can't go to work because you either work in a non-essential business, and we've said you need to shut down until we tell you can go back to work, or your company has laid you off and you're an independent contractor, we want to make sure that those people have income also so they can pay their bills, so that they can participate in the economy. We've got to get some buy-in into the economy. That's one of the things that we fought hard for, and those provisions are in the bill. We also are fighting hard to get money to state and local governments. Remember, they can't print money like the federal government does. Okay, they have a budget and they have to stay within their budget. They can't deficit spend. Well, a lot of states, think New York, think California, think Washington State, pretty soon think Pennsylvania, are being forced to expend a lot of resources that aren't in their budget because of this crisis. They need to get reimbursed too and made whole. So we've been fighting hard to make sure in that bill that there's provisions to get resources to state and local governments. And probably most importantly is the personal protection equipment for our frontline workers. These are the heroes, our firefighters, our EMTs, everyone working in a hospital or a community health center. Imagine sending these people into the most dangerous situations, into the most contagious situations, and not getting them the personal protection equipment that they need to protect themselves. And not only that, what happens if those people get sick and they can't work anymore? There's really nothing more important than that. I know that some companies are stepping up. The president, for some unexplained reason, still refuses to mandate. He has the power to do this, to mandate these companies to start producing ventilators and masks and the like. And for some bizarre reason, he just doesn't want to do it. I watched the governor of New York on television today explaining what their need is versus what they got. They got 400 ventilators, I'm saying. They need like 20,000. New York has become the epicenter for the coronavirus in this country. And we have 30,000 ventilators sitting in a stockpile. And for some reason, those aren't being released. They said, we're still trying to decide where to send them. Well, math is a pretty easy subject when there's 25,000 cases in New York City. And the next biggest case is the state of California with 2,800. 10 times the amount, you send them there. And then when those people are finally taken care of, you send them to the next place where they're needed. And all the while, you mandate our manufacturing companies, who a lot of them are stepping up. But you say, this is what you're doing now. You're not in that business anymore. You're in the business of making ventilators and masks. That's the business you're in until further notice. And the president can do that with his authority. but for some reason he hasn't.
Well, there's a number of things that if you're watching what's going on now, I mean, he's even talking about, pulling back on some of the isolation restrictions, not activating the Defense Act to get this done. So what does this look like? I mean, what are your concerns in Congress? Obviously, you have to worry about an economy and the economic downturn. You have to worry about the disease aspects of this. But on top of that, you have an executive at the top that is not really doing all the things within his power. How's that working for you?
Well, I mean, this is that is worried about how this looks for him.
Mm-hmm.
And since the centerpiece of his whole campaign and his presidency has been, look what I've done for the stock market, look what I've done for unemployment, and he sees that all unraveling now. The problem is he watches Fox News too much. Someone on Fox News made a statement to the effect of the cure can't be worse than the problem. Well, he picked up on that immediately, and all of a sudden he started tweeting that. And he's got this obsession now that somehow he doesn't need to listen to the medical experts, the ones that are saying, well, this could be a month or 2 or 3. He said, yesterday, it's not going to be that. It's going to be weeks, not months. And then today at the press conference, Dr. Anthony Fauci was visibly not there, which is causing people some concern too, because he has been the one person who has been willing to stand up and, make corrections every time the president speaks about not to push him away from the podium and make the correction. But when asked, has been very straightforward and forthcoming to the American people about what the scientific consensus is. And, this is one of our top experts in the country. We should be listening to him. I think most Americans believe in what he's saying, but this is starting to anger the president and some of his senior members that Dr. Fauci has been contradicting some of what the president's been saying on other networks. And they're, I think, looking for ways to take him off the television. I don't think they wouldn't dare fire him. I don't think they could survive that, although I'm sure it's occurred, it's in the president's mind. But we got to, if we don't solve the epidemic, this pandemic, the economy is still going to be in tatters. This has to come first, and then we have to pay attention to the economy. And that's why I think on this package, when people say, what's the most important thing in this package? The most important thing in this package is personal protection equipment for our healthcare workers and our frontline workers, and then to get some money in the pockets of the people who need it the most. I promise you, American Airlines and Boeing and all the major corporations in our country will survive for 2 more months, okay? None of them are going belly up in 2 months. But a lot of small mom and pop places, a lot of independent contractors, a lot of people who got laid off, they're not going to make 2 months. A lot of them on average have less than $400 savings in the bank. They still have mortgage payments and credit card payments, and they need to buy food, and they are being told to shelter in place and live day to day. And with no paycheck coming in, they're not going to make 2 months. So that's why those are the 2 most important things we can do: protection for the frontline workers and money to people who need it the most.
Sure. And one quick last question before we let you get back to all the work you have to do. You've been doing this a long time, and you've seen a lot. You've seen 9/11. You've seen the 2008 crash. I mean, the modern economy and the modern society has really put some challenges to Congress. Where does this rank, this dynamic in the scheme of everything that you've seen?
Where does this to me is like a 9/11 moment. When I think back on my time in Congress, this has affected the entire nation. This is a time where Americans need to come together. We need to put our party labels aside, and we need to work cooperatively to deal with this pandemic. We need to listen to the experts. The politicians need to step aside and listen to the medical experts and make sure that we give them the resources that they need to do their job. If we can do that, and at the same time hold people harmless at the people that need money the most, and then getting the businesses back in shape, there's ways to do that. And there's a $500 billion fund to start assisting some of these bigger companies to get back on their feet. And we do need a vibrant airline industry and all that. I'm not saying we shouldn't help these industries.
Sure.
We should. I'm saying in the order of what we should do first is take care of the pandemic first. And that means protecting your frontline workers, making sure we have the hospital beds, the ventilators, the masks, making sure that we flatten this curve so that we don't overwhelm the healthcare system, so that there's beds available and there's ventilators available. That's job one. Job two is getting money out to people that are living paycheck to paycheck, to make sure that their families don't go under, to get those small little mom and pop, small businesses, get to them, let these companies survive, then work our way up the ladder. That's what we need to be doing. And this calls for everyone to do their part. When I see pictures of people walking out and looking at the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. in groups of 50 or 100, it's like, what are you people thinking?
Yeah.
At certain points, Americans, we all have a personal responsibility. It's our part of being patriotic to also listen to the experts. And when they tell you to stay out of groups of people and wash your hands and don't touch your face and stay at home, we need to do that. We need to pay attention. Anyone that thinks this is a joke or a hoax is going to find out some things the hard way. But worse than that, they're going to infect other people too. So it's everyone's responsibility to pay attention to this and to do what the medical professionals are telling us we need to do.
So it's a real ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country kind of moment, isn't it?
It sure is.
All right. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time. It's good for Western Pennsylvanians to know that we have a tenured leader and experienced statesman in Washington, D.C., because what we know is something of this magnitude, we need the power of a strong federal government. So I'm glad you're there for us. Thank you so much for your time, and you take care of yourself.
Thanks, Erin. Good talking with you.
You too.
Giving Pittsburgh a better alternative. Giving Pittsburgh a better alternative. Yeah. Extra, reading the issue. Raw news, unapologetic, no tissue. Catch the wave, the flow first certain. Nothing pull you in like a Pittsburgh current. Free from influence, nothing less than. No flexing, aim for progression. We cover news, politics, all forms, and entertainment that comes in all sources. Pittsburgh.